Good morning and welcome to NBS Breakfast Meeting. My name is Mordecai Mlisa, and I will start with saying thank you so much for keeping your eyes on NBS. I brought a conversation of everything or a couple of things that we have to discuss in the breakfast meeting, and we're having a broader conversation on the extractive sector or industry, just like we did yesterday. And I will start telling you about what happened in the late 1990s, and that was the ideal that was conceived and then came to its launch in 2003, that is June. And this was about the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, and that's the discussion we're going to be having this wonderful morning. And you've heard about the transparency. That's what we're going to be discussing. There's always a couple of questions regarding the oil and mining, and we want to understand more. Wow, how far has Uganda moved? And we want to know more about the progress. Do we have challenges to mention but a few? And in the studio this wonderful morning, at my extreme end, it is Aggrey Ashaba, Advisor International Relations from Uganda Chamber of Mining and Petroleum. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mordecai, and I'm happy to be here.
Wonderful. Mr. Moses Kaggwa, the Director, Economic Affairs from the Ministry of Finance.
Good morning, Mordecai, and good morning, viewers. I'm privileged to be here.
Oh, it is our pleasure. Well, when we talk about the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, one would want to know, I will start with you, Ashaba. One would want to know the objectives of the EITI and the benefits to the Ugandans in joining. I understand, at least for the last 3 years, Uganda has been a member. So what are the benefits and the objectives?
Thank you, Mordecai. The purpose of EITI is to also look back a bit about what has been happening across resource-rich countries that have been in the minerals extractives industry. Across especially the African landscape, you will find that there's been a lot of extraction of African resources without the actual benefit of its citizens. So there has been a lot of pillage of these resources by both governments and its representatives and companies that come to operate in these environments. And when we speak about mineral resources, we are talking about both the liquids, which is petroleum, the gas, and the solid minerals, which are base metals and platinum and all these others. Ideally, what has been happening is that countries have been coming into these areas, doing whatever they do without any kind of transparency, no accountability, and it has led to what has been known as conflict minerals. It has led to what people have been talking about as the Dutch disease, as the paradox of plenty, where countries have a lot to give in terms of mineral resources, but very little in terms of economic development. So this is a conversation that has been ongoing for a very long period of time, and even at the African Union level, they have been having these kind of conversations, and in around 2009, they came up with what they call the African Mining Vision, which was basically for Africans to be able to exploit these mineral resources for broad-based and inclusive economic empowerment of its citizens. So coming to EITI, EITI is basically a global framework that is addressing these challenges. And it has come at a time where governments and companies are being held to a much higher standard than just profit maximization. They are being told that it is good for you to make money, but it's equally very important for the people or for the countries from which you exploit these extractives or these minerals, for you to be able to give back to them. So EITI is coming at a time to say that, yes, it's okay for people to make money or companies to make money, but it's important that the citizens benefit from it. So governments are being held to a higher standard, companies are being held to a higher standard. That's just coming to a country, making money and walking away is not enough. So EITI is looking at how do countries license, how do they contract, what is the legal and operational and regulatory frameworks, what are the production quotas, how much are they getting from that, the revenues, how do they allocate them, and how do they spend, and how do they diversify in terms of the revenues that they have received, so that we can avoid two-speed economies in the different resource-rich nations, and also to try and give clarity to citizens that these resources that people are exploiting, we're receiving money from them, but this is where we put it. This is what it's doing, and citizens can have also a say in what happens. So part of the process of EITI is also feedback and debate, where citizens can be able to look at some of these reports, as my colleague here, Moses, will be highlighting, and they can be able to give some input into these documents to say that maybe we spent here, but probably we could have spent better on healthcare. We could have probably spent better on infrastructure. We could probably have spent better in investing in sovereign wealth fund. So these discussions of EITI is basically to support resource-rich nations to benefit from their mineral resources.
Oh, wonderful. Well, with the knowledge of each country supposed to disclose, like he said, information on contracts and licenses, production, revenue collection and allocation, social and economic spending, one would want to know whether Uganda, as a member country, has actually come out to declare our contracts and revenues to the EITI.
Thank you, Mordecai. Uganda has not declared its revenues and contracts to the EITI Secretariat because we are a new member just starting. Maybe I'll give a genesis that we actually made a decision to join EITI last year, and when Cabinet approved the government to join, after which a public statement was issued by the minister, I think in February of 2019. Then we were appointed as the multi-stakeholder group to oversee the process. After our appointment, we had to prepare terms of reference and then prepare our work plan. So after doing this, then we submitted our candidature in July of this year, and then we got admitted. So with the admission, of course, we'll have to, there's a requirement that we must disclose our contracts, we must disclose the revenues that are coming in, we must disclose how much money we are going to give to the local governments or to the communities that are going to, who are within the areas of extraction. We must disclose the amount of money we are spending on infrastructure for the extractive industry. We must disclose the role. Now we have a company called Uganda National Oil Company. Its operations, all these, how much money we are spending on it, what it's doing, all this has to be disclosed. So for purposes of transparency, and that's where we are. And we have been given 18 months for us to start offering this. So we have a task between now and those 18 months to work so hard and make sure that we fulfill all the requirements. That's when we'll do our first reporting. Thank you.
Oh, well, coming back to you, Aggrey, is this the only way that citizens can actually benefit from the resources?
Broadly, yes, but also to just probably flesh out a bit, is that one of the other advantages of EITI is that it supports the mitigation of illicit financial flows. Because what has been happening in resource-rich nations is that so many illegal money has been moving around and people being able to repatriate it. But like Moses has said, is that because it's now incumbent on both government and the operators to disclose every single payment that is made, it means that it's going to reduce on the number of illicit financial flows going out of the country, which means that that will become a benefit to Ugandans or the citizens of the country. Secondly, it also supports or mitigates transfer mispricing. Because transfer mispricing is that, I'll give an example. One of the countries that I know where there's been an operator, he has been in the country, into the mineral sector, operating for the last 20 years, but has not declared a single profit. But somehow, because of transfer mispricing, they work around the books in accounts and everything, so the government does not benefit from mineral rents, and they cannot charge even the 30% corporation tax. So all these things are going to be mitigated and stopped and reduced, meaning that there will be more money staying in the country and being able to support its citizens. But just to answer your question, yes, it supports all these transparency initiatives, it supports the accountability, but I think the most important is also the in-country value. is that how do citizens participate, how do companies benefit from its own minerals, and how do we build skills, create employment, work on social licenses to operate, like Moses has just highlighted. The communities under which these companies operate, how are they supported? How are they supported to grow and also not to be reliant on just one single commodity, but they can be trained to do other things. And here is where we broadly speak about local content. How do we build these capacities for medium, small, and micro, medium, and small enterprises? How do we work with the women? How do we stop child labor? How do we work on our environmental concerns? All these things are benefits to the country. And it's embedded within EITI, but it's not explicitly stated. And I believe through the multi-stakeholder group, which is a partnership between the ministry, private sector, and civil society, we can be able to unpack and see how this can be reported, implemented, and worked to optimize the in-country value. Because if you have probably a resource, and I'll talk probably about oil and gas, you're going to spend almost $15 billion or $20 billion. How much of that money is going to stay in country? Besides just the mineral rent from royalties, from tax, and all these other things. If we can be able to retain, as Ugandans, up to 30-40% of $20 million, I can tell you that this country is going to change. You'll have more millionaires, you'll have more businesses coming up, you'll have more entrepreneurs, you'll have better skills, and people that can be able to support the economy to grow in other sectors of the different linkages of the petroleum sector.
Well, when you talk about the issues of transparency and talking about this mega industry and in relation to the EITI, a Ugandan would be interested to know, is this a continuous assessment? Is Uganda ready to participate continuously in this? Well, it's been there for at least for not even 5 years. But do we see it more and more?
Yes, I want to say that it's a continuous assessment. And a continuous assessment that will require government to report almost on an annual basis or on a 2-year basis on the revenues that have come in, on the expenditures that have been made by governments. He's talked about, by companies, he's talked about mispricing. What this actually means is that companies inflate the costs of their expenditures. The extraction, they have brought in rigs, they have brought in heavy equipment, and they say it has cost so much. So there is that inflation, possible inflation. So when there is disclosure, then people see whether actually what Uganda is being charged for these services is comparable with what everyone else is charging in the world. So people can see this. And that helps in building the transparency, in building the confidence, not only in the extractive sector, but also building the confidence for investors, foreign and direct and domestic investors, to know that, yes, Uganda is a good country and it's following transparency and accountability rules. So this is going to be regular reporting. But how is it going to really benefit? How are we going to make sure that this reporting is not just the reporting for the sake of it? How will the citizen, the person down in Bulisa, know that actually, yes, this reporting has been done, it's regular, and it's satisfactory? How will they know that their oil has actually not been extracted before they get to know? Because there have been rumors that already people see aeroplanes landing in Bulisa and they are taking oil. So this is going to help. This reporting, people are going to see that, yes, this is the right path. This is how the industry is being regulated, and it's fair, and everybody will believe that. They're also going to know. How are we going to do that? Through making sure that the multi-stakeholder group does outreach programs, It publishes these things. They talk to the communities and trying to teach, to educate them and inform them on the revenues that are coming in, the reports that are being made, and the expenditures that are being made by the companies, so that there is that wide knowledge. But I just want to also emphasize yes, it is going to be constant. We are going to be reporting consistently. And if the EITI Secretariat doesn't believe that government of Uganda is doing the right thing, they will suspend us. And some countries have been suspended. You can be suspended for a few years and they tell you must put your house in order. If you are not putting your house in order, you could even be expelled. So there is that control. That's why it's also important. It's going to be constant reporting. And then every time we are going to be on the radar, being analyzed and being kept on our tenterhooks to ensure that we play by the rules. Thank you.
Well, I understand, Mr. Aggrey, you come from the private sector. What does it mean for the private sector? And if you could throw more light on the benefits, I remember Finance Minister Matia Kasaija, when we were speaking about Uganda joining, to throw more light on how it's going to be, I hope, to the overall transparency of the sector. So a Ugandan would want to, get it from you. Break it down. How are they benefiting? I know you did, but throw more light. And then in relation to the private sector.
Okay, just probably to add on to what Moses has just highlighted. Where we are coming from with the issues around minerals and governments is not a good story to tell. What EITI is trying to cure now is the mutual trust deficiency between governments, companies, and its citizens. Because the three of them have different expectations and light in which they view. He has just told you that some people think that oil is already being exported. And I have my friend, the presidential aspirant, Mr. Kableta, who has always been saying that oil has been transported and being exported, which is not correct. So that comes from a place of mutual trust deficiency. What that gives now with the EITI, with the transparency, with the reporting, with being able to submit all these things is that all the three parties begin to understand each other. Government will know that the oil companies are not coming in for just a kill. The companies will know that government is also not just trying to squeeze them. They are trying to fight for the benefits of its citizens. And the citizens now will begin to be able to look at the actual benefits. Coming down to the real actual benefits, for example, for the oil and gas, even for the mining, there are benefits in actually doing business through subcontracting, for logistics services, for life support services, for employment, for consultants, for transportation, food, business, name it. Every single thing that can be procured, both goods and services within the country, should be able to be procured inside here. For oil and gas, for example, there's already what we call the local content law, which says that 48% of the value of any single contract has to be done in country by Ugandan companies. So already that is a benefit. What does that mean? It means that if an oil company's contractor has a contract of 1 million shillings, 480,000 of that should come back to a Ugandan entity by provision of goods and services. They're providing food, accommodation, transport, services, maybe engineering, employment, name it. But this type of employment and the services that are provided by companies has to also be meaningful in such a way that people can actually make money. Because what has been happening also is that they employ someone and at probably a third of what an expatriate would be employed at the same level. So the transparency that Moses has just highlighted will be able to bring out these things. Is that yes, you've employed a Ugandan in this position, but he's getting a third of what the expatriate 2 years before him was earning. So then we have a conversation around that. And then we also look at the in-country spend. How much money of the 1 million have you spent in country? And where has it gone to? Has it gone to a Ugandan entity, or it has gone to another company which is owned by different people and is being given work that should have gone to Ugandans? So the benefit is there, and we are saying through these 90 days, we are going to highlight these benefits. Along the way, there are going to be people to speak about the size of the opportunity, to speak about the actual opportunities and how Ugandans can benefit. So what I urge our viewers is that they should keep glued to NBS for the next 90 days. This opportunity is going to be unbundled. It's going to be unpacked. You need to look at where you can plug and fit in, and you will be able to take a share of this cake.
You hinted on something very huge when you talked about suspension. Uganda being a member with over 50 country members. What does it mean to be suspended from the EITI?
Thank you. EITI is voluntary, but a lot of people, governments, development agencies, and companies really look at it as a standard, as a threshold, which shows that companies follow good governance principles. They are accountable to the people of their country. They are accountable to the private sector, and they are accountable to the civil society. So when you sign in and say, yes, I follow good governance principles and I'm accountable, and then you are suspended, it is a very strong signal that you are almost a rogue country. You don't follow internationally and accepted and best standards that are there in the extractive industry. What does this mean? It may mean that investors, because there are a lot of investors, want to go to a country where there is transparency. When they know there is transparency in the way you are allocating, you are awarding contracts, in the way you are getting your money, in the way the companies are providing for their expenditures. So all this, people will be comfortable and say, well, if I'm going here and put my money in Uganda, I'll be able to get it out, and I will be able to face competition that is not skewed. So that one, we would lose it. Once people know that Uganda is not playing by the rules, they will not come here. That is a very, very bad thing. It will affect our revenues coming in. It will affect foreign and domestic investments coming in. It will also affect our ability to borrow, because now we are going to borrow higher when they know that this country is not transparent. They will say they are going to borrow for this, they may not actually borrow for it, they may not pay back. So we are going to have to pay at high premiums. So it's a very, very big thing if you get suspended. Thank you.
Well, it seems like we are running out of time. What would be your concluding remark?
I think for me is that it's very good for Uganda to join EITI. And just to add on to what Moses has just highlighted, EITI is another mark of the Ugandan brand that gives confidence and trust to investors, to the business community, to global lending powers, that Uganda is doing the correct thing and they're a good bet for anyone who wants to do business in the country. So we should support this initiative. We should work towards it. The government has given its commitment, and that commitment is a sign of confidence to the world markets, and it should be able to propel us to greater heights.
Well, thank you. Moses, your concluding remark.
All I'm saying, my concluding remark is that prudent use of natural resources is an important engine for sustainable economic development and can lead to sustainable economic growth and poverty reduction. So we should really embrace EITI as a very good thing, because it's going to take us in that direction. Thank you.
Well, yeah, it's my pleasure. Well, thank you so much as well. Just like you've had the conversation from the two gentlemen, very important. There's a lot of questions regarding the oil and mining sector or the extractive sector. Just like he said, keep your eyes glued on NBS for the 9 days of this program, and you can be able to know the answers to the questions that you do have. I mean, there are so many allegations, like you talked about, Joseph Kableta. I've heard him say that you already are exporting oil. It's a big question. Are we or not? And part of the way of knowing this is keeping your eyes glued to NBS. I am Mordecai Mlisa, and I say thank you so much for keeping your eyes on NBS. Until we catch up again, good morning.